The year was 2347, and humanity had spread across the stars like seeds carried by the wind. 3 solar systems now bore the mark of human civilization. Tall cities rose on distant moons. Children played under alien suns. Earth remained the heart of it all, a blue jewel floating in the endless dark, home to 12 billion souls who believed they were safe. Admiral Brooks had served in the fleet for 34 years. She had gray hair now, cut short in the military style, and lines on her face that told stories of hard decisions and sleepless nights. On that particular morning, she stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, watching cargo ships move between Earth and the Moon. It was a peaceful sight. She allowed herself a small smile. Then the alarms began to scream. Every screen on the station turned red. Warning lights flashed in the corridors. Ran to the command center, her boots pounding against the metal floor. When she arrived, she found her officers staring at the main display with faces drained of color. 300 ships had appeared at the edge of the solar system. They were not human ships. They were something else entirely. Each vessel was massive, stretching nearly 4 kilometers from bow to stern. Their hulls were black as night, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. They moved in perfect formation, like predators closing in on wounded prey. "What are they?" asked, though part of her already knew the answer. Lieutenant Torres, a young woman with dark eyes and steady hands, worked frantically at her console. "Unknown design, Admiral. We have never seen anything like this. Their technology is far beyond ours." Felt her heart grow cold. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it was terrifying. On the defensive cruiser USS Resilience, Commander Daniel Hayes watched the same images with growing dread. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and a calm voice that his crew depended on. But even his voice wavered when he saw the size of those alien ships. "All hands to battle stations," he ordered. "This is not a drill." His crew moved with trained precision, but he could see the fear in their eyes. They had trained for combat against pirates and rebels. They had never imagined facing something like this. The alien transmission came without warning. It cut through every communication channel, every radio frequency, every screen on Earth and its colonies. A cold voice spoke in perfect English, though no human throat could have produced such sounds. "Species designated human, you have expanded beyond your birth world. You have spread your kind across multiple star systems. This expansion has been noted. This expansion has been judged. Your existence poses a threat to the established order of the galaxy. Therefore, your existence must end. You have 1 solar cycle to prepare your final words. After that, there will be silence." The message repeated 3 times, then stopped. Panic spread like fire through dry grass. On Earth, people ran through the streets screaming, crying, holding their loved ones. On the colonies, families gathered around screens, watching the news with hollow eyes. The governments of humanity issued statements calling for calm, but no one felt calm. Everyone understood what was happening. They were about to die. Admiral Brooks did not panic. She had no time for panic. She immediately contacted every military commander in the human fleet and ordered a full mobilization. Every ship capable of combat was to gather near Earth. Every weapon was to be loaded. Every soldier was to report for duty. But even as she gave these orders, she knew the truth. The human fleet numbered 47 combat-ready vessels. The largest was the carrier USS Constellation, measuring just under 1 kilometer long. Against 300 alien warships, each 4 times that size, humanity had no chance. This was not a battle. It was an execution. Commander Daniel Hayes brought the USS Resilience to Earth and took his position in the defensive line. Around him, the other ships of the fleet gathered like frightened sheep. He looked at his crew and saw young faces, some barely out of training. They deserved better than this. They deserved a chance to live. "Sir," his communications officer said, "Admiral Brooks is requesting all commanders join a conference call." Daniel accepted the call and saw his face appear on his screen along with the faces of 46 other ship commanders. They all looked tired. They all looked scared. But they also looked determined. "We all know the situation," said. "We are outnumbered and our technology cannot match theirs. By every measure of military strategy, we cannot win this fight." She paused and let those words hang in the air. "But we are going to fight anyway. We are going to fight because that is what humans do. We fight when others run. We stand when others fall. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars that nearly destroyed us. We have clawed our way from caves to the stars, and we will not go quietly into the night." Daniel felt something stir in his chest. It was not hope exactly. It was something older, something deeper. It was the stubborn refusal to surrender that had carried humanity through every dark chapter of its history. Back on Unity Station, Lieutenant Torres was not preparing for battle. She was digging through old files, searching for something she only half remembered reading about years ago. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she accessed archives that had not been opened in decades. "What are you looking for?" a colleague asked. "I do not know," admitted, "but there is something here, something we forgot." She searched for hours while the fleet prepared for its final stand. She searched through records of old missions and abandoned projects and ships that had been lost to time. And then, buried under layers of forgotten data, she found it. A single file, a ship designation, USS Endurance, status unknown, last recorded position somewhere in the outer reaches of the belt, billions of kilometers from Earth, launch date 2089. Stared at the screen. A ship from 2089 would be over 250 years old. Surely it could not still exist. Surely its crew could not still be alive. But the file showed something strange. The ship's beacon was still active, faint but active. Someone was still out there. Ran to find Admiral Brooks. She did not know if this discovery would change anything. She did not know if one ancient ship could matter against 300 alien warships, but she knew that humanity needed every chance it could get. And somewhere in the cold darkness of deep space, something ancient was waking up. The USS Endurance was not a beautiful ship. She had never been beautiful, even when she was new. She was built in the year 2089, during a time when humanity was just beginning to reach beyond Earth. Her designers did not care about elegance or style. They cared about survival. Her hull was made of thick steel plates, layered and reinforced to withstand the dangers of deep space. Her weapons were simple and brutal. Mass drivers that fired metal slugs at incredible speeds, torpedo tubes loaded with nuclear warheads, no fancy energy beams or plasma arrays, just raw, destructive power. She was sent to the edge of the solar system on a patrol mission that was supposed to last 100 years. Her crew were volunteers, men and women who knew they would never return to Earth. They accepted this sacrifice because they believed in their mission. They believed humanity needed guardians in the dark. When faster-than-light travel was discovered in 2156, everything changed. Humanity could now reach the stars in days rather than decades. The old patrol ships became obsolete overnight. The governments of Earth had more exciting things to focus on: new colonies, new technologies, new frontiers. They forgot about the USS Endurance. They forgot about the men and women who had given up everything to stand watch in the void. But the Endurance did not forget. Captain Gregory Cole was 73 years old. He had been born on the Endurance in the small medical bay on Deck 7. His father had been the captain before him, and his grandmother before that. 4 generations of the Cole family had commanded this ship, maintaining her systems, training her crew, and waiting for orders that never came. Gregory was a hard man with a hard face. His hair was white and his hands were rough from decades of work. He walked with a slight limp from an accident in the engine room 20 years ago, but his eyes were sharp and his mind was sharper. He stood on the bridge of his ship and listened to the alien transmission with a calm expression. Around him, the crew of 112 souls watched in silence. They had intercepted the message meant for Earth. They had heard the cold voice promising extinction. "They think they know what humans are," Gregory said quietly. "They have studied our colonies and our cities. They see our comfortable lives and our peaceful ways. They think we are soft." He turned to face his crew. These were people whose families had served on the Endurance for over 200 years. They had never seen Earth. They had never walked under an open sky or felt rain on their faces. They had spent their entire lives in the cold metal corridors of this ancient frigate, training for a battle that might never come. "They do not know what we are," Gregory continued. "They do not know what we were, but we remember. We remember when humans were hunters and warriors. We remember when survival meant fighting for every breath. They think humanity forgot those lessons. They are wrong." Commander Lisa stepped forward. She was Gregory's first officer, a small woman with quick hands and a brilliant tactical mind. Her family had served as weapons officers on the Endurance for 4 generations. "Captain, I have been monitoring the tactical situation," she said. "The human fleet near Earth numbers 47 ships. The alien fleet numbers 300. The mathematics are clear. Earth cannot win this fight." Gregory nodded slowly. "No, they cannot. They have forgotten how to fight like we fight. They have weapons that shine and glow. They have ships that are fast and sleek, but they have forgotten the old ways." He walked to the viewport and stared out at the stars. Earth was far away, billions of kilometers distant, a speck of blue light that none of his crew had ever seen except in pictures. "We have trained for this moment our entire lives," Gregory said. "Every drill, every simulation, every repair. It was all for this. The universe has finally sent us an enemy worthy of our attention." Lisa looked at her captain with steady eyes. "We are one ship, sir. One old ship against 300 alien warships. What can we possibly do?" Gregory turned and smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a predator who had been waiting in the shadows for 2 centuries. "We are going to show them what humans used to be," he said. "We are going to remind them why our ancestors conquered their world. Set course for Earth, Commander. Maximum burn." Lisa hesitated for only a moment, then nodded. "All hands prepare for maximum acceleration. Secure all stations. We are going home." The Endurance had been drifting in the outer reaches of the solar system for so long that her crew had almost forgot what it felt like to move at full speed. The ancient engines roared to life, shaking the ship from bow to stern. Crew members grabbed onto handholds as the acceleration pushed them backward. Down in the armory, Chief Petty Officer Young began preparing the weapons. The torpedo tubes had been maintained in perfect condition for 250 years. The mass drivers had been tested and calibrated every month without fail. The nuclear warheads in their reinforced casings were checked and double-checked. Was 61 years old. His father had been an armory chief. His grandfather had been an armory chief. He knew every weapon on this ship like he knew his own hands. "Load all tubes," he ordered his team. "Check every round, check every system. When we reach Earth, we are not going to miss." In the medical bay, Doctor prepared for casualties. She had no illusions about what was coming. A ship this old, fighting enemies this powerful, would take damage. People would be hurt. People would die. She organized her supplies and briefed her staff with calm efficiency. On the bridge, Gregory Cole sat in his command chair and watched the stars stream past. He thought about his father, who had commanded this ship for 30 years. He thought about his grandmother, who had volunteered for this mission knowing she would never return home. He thought about all the men and women who had lived and died on the Endurance, maintaining her, training on her, waiting for the day when they would finally be needed. That day had come. "Sir," Lisa said, "at maximum burn we will reach Earth in 18 hours." Gregory nodded. 18 hours. Then we will see what these aliens are truly made of. The USS Endurance accelerated through the darkness of space, her ancient engines burning bright. She was old and worn and from centuries of service, but she was also dangerous. She was a weapon forged in an earlier age, when humanity built machines for war rather than comfort. And she was coming home. The Dominion had conquered 417 species across the galaxy. They had erased civilizations that had existed for millions of years. They had destroyed empires that spanned entire star clusters. In all that time, they had never encountered a species that could stand against them. The Arbiter was the commander of this fleet. He was ancient by standards, his body sustained by technology that humans could not begin to understand. He had personally overseen the extinction of 63 species. He viewed it not as cruelty but as necessity. The galaxy had an order. Young species that expanded too quickly threatened that order. It was his duty to correct such mistakes. He watched the human defensive formation with something that resembled amusement. 47 ships arranged in a line around there. Their largest vessel was barely 1 kilometer long. Their weapons were primitive. Their shields were weak. "Pathetic," he said to his tactical officers. "This will not even be entertaining." The fleet advanced with methodical precision. Each ship knew its role. Each captain knew the plan. They would destroy the human fleet first, then bombard the planet until nothing remained. It was the same strategy they had used 1,000 times before. Admiral Brooks stood on the bridge of the carrier USS Constellation and watched the enemy approach. Her hands were steady, but her heart was racing. She had served in the fleet her entire adult life, but she had never faced anything like this. No human had. "All ships, this is Admiral Brooks," she said over the fleet-wide channel. "Today we fight for our homes. Today we fight for our families. Today we fight for every human being who has ever lived and every human being who might yet be born. No retreat. No surrender." The battle began at 8:47 hours, Earth Standard Time. They opened fire first. Their energy weapons cut through the void like beams of solid light. The first human ship to die was the destroyer USS Gallant. One moment she was there, her crew of 200 souls ready to fight. The next moment she was gone, vaporized by a weapon that humanity had no defense against. Commander Daniel Hayes watched from the bridge of the USS Resilience as 3 more ships died in the first minute of combat. They were not just winning. They were barely trying. Their weapons tore through human shields like paper. Their missiles seemed to predict every evasive maneuver. "Return fire," Daniel ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos. "All batteries target the nearest enemy vessel." The Resilience fired everything she had. Plasma beams and guided missiles streaked toward the dreadnought. Some were intercepted by point defense systems. Those that got through splashed harmlessly against the enemy shields. They did no damage at all. By the end of the first hour, 12 human ships had been destroyed. They had not lost a single vessel. The battle was already over. What remained was simply the dying. Admiral Brooks refused to surrender. She ordered her ships to continue fighting, to continue firing, to make the enemy pay for every kilometer they advanced. But she knew the truth. She was watching the death of her species in real time. Then at 9:23 hours, something changed. Lieutenant Torres had transferred to the Constellation to serve as a tactical officer during the battle. She was monitoring the long-range sensors when she saw it. A single contact approaching from the outer system at incredible speed. "Admiral," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos of the bridge, "you need to see this." Turned to look at the display. A single ship was coming. Her identification beacon was broadcasting a signal that modern computers could barely recognize. It was old, incredibly old. USS Endurance, read. Commissioned 2089, Captain Gregory Cole commanding. Stared at the screen. That ship is over 250 years old. How is it still functioning? I do not know, Admiral, but she is coming fast and she is heading directly for the enemy fleet. On the bridge of the USS Resilience, Commander Daniel Hayes saw the same contact appear on his tactical display. One ship against 300. It seemed like madness. "What is she doing?" he whispered. The Arbiter noticed the newcomer as well. He examined the data with his tactical officers and felt a flicker of confusion. The ship was ancient by any standard. Her hull was made of materials that had stopped using millions of years ago. Her engines were primitive chemical rockets rather than the elegant gravity drives of modern vessels. "Ignore it," the Arbiter commanded. "It is not worth our attention." That was his first mistake. The USS Endurance did not slow down as she approached the battle zone. She accelerated. Her ancient engines burned at maximum power, pushing the ship to speeds that her designers had never intended. Captain Gregory Cole stood at the center of his bridge, watching the enemy fleet grow larger on his. "All hands battle stations," he said. "Load all torpedo tubes, spin up the mass drivers. Today we fight for humanity." Commander Lisa checked her tactical display. "Captain, the enemy shields appear to be designed to absorb and redirect energy-based weapons. Our kinetic weapons should be effective against them." Gregory smiled that Predator smile again. "Then let us see how they handle weapons they have never faced." The Endurance burst into the battle zone like a thunderbolt from history. Her hull was and patched from centuries of service. Her design was ancient and brutal. She looked like something from a museum rather than a battlefield. But when she fired her first salvo, everything changed. The mass drivers hurled metal slugs at a significant fraction of the speed of light. The nuclear-tipped torpedoes screamed toward their targets on trails of fire. The shields, designed to absorb energy attacks, could not stop solid objects traveling at those speeds. The first torpedo struck the lead dreadnought and detonated against its hull. The nuclear explosion tore through the alien vessel like it was made of glass. 4 kilometers of advanced technology and 3,000 crew members ceased to exist in a single blinding flash. The Arbiter stared at his display in disbelief. One of his warships, a vessel that had helped conquer 100 worlds, had just been destroyed by a single shot from an ancient human frigate. "What is that ship?" he demanded. No one had an answer. Admiral Brooks watched the explosion from the bridge of the Constellation. Tears were streaming down her face, but they were tears of hope rather than despair. "All ships," she ordered, her voice strong and clear. "Follow that frigate. Follow her into the fire." The USS Endurance did not fight like modern human ships. She did not stay at a safe distance and exchange fire. She did not rely on shields to protect her. She charged directly into the heart of the enemy fleet like a wolf among sheep. Captain Gregory Cole had studied warfare his entire life. Not the clean, sanitized warfare of the modern age, but the brutal, bloody warfare of ancient Earth. He had read about Thermopylae and Stalingrad, and he understood that sometimes victory required sacrifice. Sometimes victory required getting close enough to smell the blood of your enemy. "Helm, take us between their formation," Gregory ordered. "Put us where their big ships cannot fire without hitting each other." The Endurance dove into the center of the fleet. It was a suicidal maneuver by any standard tactical analysis. But Gregory was not following standard tactics. He was following instincts that had been honed over 2 centuries of training and isolation. The dreadnoughts tried to target the ancient frigate, but she was too close. Their massive weapons were designed to destroy enemies from thousands of kilometers away. They could not track a target that was practically scraping against their hulls. Commander Lisa coordinated the weapon systems with deadly precision. "Port batteries, fire on that cruiser. Starboard torpedoes, target the dreadnought on our right. Reload and repeat." The mass drivers roared, the torpedoes launched, and ships began to die. The alien vessels were not designed to resist kinetic impacts. Their shields could absorb energy attacks that would vaporize a small moon, but a chunk of metal traveling at 30,000 kilometers per second passed right through. Their armor was thin because they had never needed thick armor. No species had ever gotten close enough to hurt them with primitive projectile weapons. The Endurance got close. A cruiser exploded as 3 mass driver rounds tore through her engineering section. A destroyer vanished in nuclear fire as 2 torpedoes found her ammunition storage. The ancient human frigate carved a path of destruction through the enemy fleet, leaving burning wreckage in her wake. But the Endurance was taking damage too. A beam weapon scored a direct hit on her starboard side, melting through the outer armor and killing 6 crew members instantly. Another shot took out her secondary communications array. A missile struck her aft section and disabled one of her engines. Chief Petty Officer Young led a damage control team through the burning corridors. "Get those fires out," he shouted. "Seal that breach. We are not dying yet." His team worked with desperate speed. They patched holes with whatever materials they could find. They rerouted power from damaged systems. They did everything possible to keep the old ship fighting. On the bridge, Gregory Cole felt the ship shudder with each hit. He saw the damage reports scrolling across his screens. He knew the Endurance could not survive this battle forever, but she did not need to survive forever. She just needed to hurt the enemy badly enough to give humanity a chance. "How many?" he asked. Lisa checked her display. 27 confirmed kills, Captain, 4 more probable. 31 enemy ships destroyed by a single ancient frigate. It was a record that would live forever in human history. The Arbiter watched his tactical display with growing fury. This was impossible. This was unacceptable. One primitive ship was not supposed to cause this much damage. One species that had barely learned to travel between stars was not supposed to fight back like this. "All ships focus fire on that frigate," he commanded. "Destroy it now." The fleet began to concentrate their attacks on the Endurance. Dozens of beam weapons targeted her at once. Missiles swarmed toward her from every direction. Gregory saw the danger. Evasive maneuvers, all power to forward shields. The Endurance twisted and dodged with an agility that should have been impossible for a ship her age. Her crew had maintained every system, every thruster, every control surface for over 200 years. She responded to their commands like a living thing. But even the Endurance could not dodge everything. A beam weapon struck her bridge, melting through the ceiling and killing 4 officers at their stations. Gregory was thrown from his chair, his left arm burned by the superheated air. He pulled himself back up and kept giving orders. "Maintain fire, do not stop firing." Admiral Brooks watched the Endurance fight and felt something she had not felt since the battle began: hope. The ancient frigate was showing the rest of the fleet that they could be hurt, they could be killed, they could be beaten. "All ships advance," ordered. "Support the Endurance, hit them while they are focused on her." The human fleet surged forward. 35 ships remained, battered and damaged but still fighting. They added their fire to the Endurance's attack, pouring plasma and missiles into the formation. The battle had changed. They were no longer hunting defenseless prey. They were fighting an enemy that refused to die. Commander Daniel Hayes brought the USS Resilience alongside the Endurance, adding his ship's firepower to the assault. He could see the ancient frigate through his viewport. Her hull was covered with burn marks and impact craters. Smoke poured from a dozen breaches, but she was still fighting. "What kind of people built that ship?" his first officer asked in wonder. "The same kind of people who built us," Daniel replied. "Humans." In the armory of the Endurance, Young loaded the last of the nuclear torpedoes. They had fired everything they had. Now they were down to mass driver rounds and a few conventional missiles. "Make every shot count," he told his team. "We do not have anything left to waste." Captain Gregory Cole sat in his damaged command chair, blood running down his arm, and watched the enemy fleet begin to waver. They had never faced an enemy like this. They had never encountered a species that would sacrifice everything just to keep fighting. "How many now?" Gregory asked. Lisa checked the updated numbers. 93 confirmed kills across the fleet. The Endurance alone has 41. 93 ships destroyed. That was nearly a third of their fleet. The Arbiter had expected to annihilate humanity in a matter of hours. Instead, he was watching his supposedly invincible armada being torn apart by primitives. Gregory looked at his crew. They were tired and wounded and scared, but they were also proud. They had done what they were born to do. They had defended humanity. "Keep fighting," he said quietly. "Keep fighting until we cannot fight anymore." The Endurance fired again. Another ship died, and somewhere in the darkness of space, the Arbiter began to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. He had come to exterminate a species. Instead, he had awakened something ancient and dangerous. He had awakened humanity. The battle raged for 7 hours. 7 hours of fire and death and desperate courage. 7 hours that would be remembered for as long as humanity existed. The USS Endurance fought at the center of it all. Her hull was more scar than steel now. Half her weapons were destroyed. Her engines sputtered and failed and were brought back to life by engineers who refused to give up. She was dying, but she would not stop fighting. Captain Gregory Cole had been wounded 3 times during the engagement. His left arm was burned and useless. A piece of shrapnel had opened a gash across his forehead. His ribs were cracked from being thrown across the bridge by an explosion, but he refused to leave his command chair. Around him, the bridge crew worked at damaged consoles with bleeding hands. The lights flickered constantly. Smoke hung in the air despite the ventilation systems working at maximum. Bodies lay where they had fallen because there was no time to move them. "Status report," Gregory said, his voice rough from the smoke. Commander Lisa looked at her display. Her face was streaked with tears and soot, but her voice was steady. 152 confirmed kills, Captain. The enemy fleet has lost more than half its strength, but we have also taken heavy losses. 23 of our original fleet are gone. The Endurance has hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. We have lost main power twice. Life support is failing in the aft sections. Gregory nodded slowly, and the crew. Lisa hesitated before answering. 89 dead, sir. We have 23 crew members still functioning. 23 out of 112. Gregory felt the weight of those numbers pressed down on him. 89 people who had trusted him. 89 people who had given their lives for a world they had never seen. But their sacrifice had not been in vain. The Arbiter stared at his tactical display with hollow eyes. This was not supposed to happen. His fleet had conquered hundreds of species. They had never lost a battle. They had never even come close to losing a battle. Now more than half his ships were destroyed or crippled. His crew were dying by the thousands, and the humans were still fighting. They had lost ships, yes. They had lost people, but they would not surrender. They would not run. For the first time in his ancient life, the Arbiter felt something he did not recognize. It took him several moments to identify the emotion. Fear. "Retreat," he ordered. His tactical officers looked at him in shock. They had never retreated. Retreat was a concept that belonged to lesser species. "Commander," I said, "retreat. All ships disengage and prepare to jump to faster-than-light speed. We are leaving." The fleet broke formation. Ships that had come to exterminate a species now fled in disorder, their commanders desperate to escape the battle zone before more of them died. One by one, they activated their faster-than-light drives and vanished into the darkness of space. Admiral Brooks watched the enemy disappear from her sensors and felt her legs give out beneath her. She grabbed the edge of her command console and held on as relief washed through her like a wave. "They are retreating," Lieutenant Torres reported, her voice breaking. "Admiral, they are retreating. We won." We won. Two words that no one had expected to hear. Two words that meant humanity would survive. On the bridge of the USS Endurance, Gregory Cole watched the last ship flee and allowed himself a small smile. His ship was dying around him. His crew was mostly dead. His own body was failing. But none of that mattered now. "We did it," he said quietly. "We saved them." Lisa knelt beside his command chair. Tears were flowing freely down her face now. "We did, Captain. We saved Earth." Gregory reached out with his good hand and touched her shoulder. "Lisa, I need you to take command now. The ship needs a captain, and I do not think I have much time left." Lisa shook her head. "No, sir. We are getting you to medical. Doctor will patch you up." "Doctor died 3 hours ago," Gregory said gently. "Along with most of her staff. It is all right, Lisa. I have done what I was meant to do. My family has served on this ship for 4 generations. We have waited over 200 years for this day. I am glad I got to see it." The rescue ships from the fleet arrived 30 minutes later. Admiral Brooks led the boarding party personally. She had to see the ship that had saved humanity. She had to meet the people who had emerged from the darkness to fight beside them. When she stepped aboard the Endurance and saw the interior of the ancient vessel, she wept. The corridors were narrow and cramped. The technology was primitive. The living quarters were Spartan and cold. These people had lived their entire lives in these conditions, maintaining this ship, training for a battle that might never come. And when the call finally came, they had answered without hesitation. She found Captain Gregory Cole still in his command chair. He was barely conscious, kept alive only by stubbornness and duty. When he saw her uniform, he managed to straighten slightly. "Admiral," he said, "Gregory Cole, commanding USS Endurance. We came as fast as we could." Knelt beside him and took his hand. "You saved us, Captain. You saved all of us." Gregory smiled weakly. "We did our duty. That is all we ever wanted, to be useful, to be remembered." He died 3 hours later, surrounded by the surviving members of his crew. His last words were simple. "Tell them we were here. Tell them we never forgot who we were." The USS Endurance was towed back to Earth. She was too damaged to ever fly again, but no one wanted to scrap her. Instead, she was placed in permanent memorial orbit above the planet she had saved. Her surviving crew members were honored as the greatest heroes in human history. In the months that followed, humanity rebuilt. New ships were constructed with thick armor and kinetic weapons. New tactics were developed based on the lessons of the battle. The galaxy had sent an enemy to destroy them, and humanity had evolved to meet the challenge. They never returned. They told other species about the humans, about their ancient ships and their brutal weapons, about their refusal to surrender even when all hope was lost, about the price they were willing to pay for victory. In the halls of power across the galaxy, a new phrase became common. When discussing humanity, when warning others about what they might face if they challenged Earth, they would say, "Remember the Endurance." Because that was what humanity was, not just the shining cities and comfortable lives, not just the art and music and culture. Humanity was also the darkness, the stubbornness, the absolute refusal to ever give up. And somewhere in the void, the Endurance orbited silently above Earth, a monument to the past, a warning to the future, a reminder that humanity would always have guardians willing to give everything for their people. They had been forgotten once. They would never be forgotten again.